And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 21st day of April. Apologies for a bit of a late start. Well, here we are. Let's get and see what today holds for us. 24 degrees and partly sunny. Well, looks like a bit of a cloud out there this morning. But, today we have lots to go through and cover, and especially we'll take a look at the debate, the big debate yesterday, and see how did the two fare out of that. But first of all, let's get on the road with some of the news. Don't forget that today we will also have the Daily India Report coming up towards the end of the show. So what is needed to re-stabilize the economy, get the business up and running and going? Maybe a good migration program.
It's been held by Labour for nearly 20 years. The multicultural seat of Parramatta is a booming commercial centre in the western suburbs of Sydney, and it's on the Liberal Party's hit list. Finding staff is becoming a hot economic issue for many businesses, including at this Indian restaurant.
At times our partners were doing the waitering and the dish cleaning job ourselves because we could not find the workforce.
Restaurant owner Raza Saeed wants the next government to speed up the visa application process.
Swift, quick, smart migration where less time is served into the paperwork.
David Bodger from Business Western Sydney says labour shortages is the top issue for employers in this electorate.
We've got a lot of skill shortages. We have to fill those gaps. If we don't, we will suffer in terms of productivity. We will suffer in terms of our competitiveness. We'll suffer in terms of lost income, and ultimately that affects everyone. So, we need a big, bold, ambitious migration program.
Parramatta is held by Labour by a margin of 3.5%. Long-standing MP Julie Owens is retiring. Western Sydney businesswoman Maria Kovacic is backed by the Prime Minister and is challenging high-profile economist and Labour candidate Andrew Charlton. The vote could also be fractured by former Labour-turned-independent Steve Christou. He's criticised both parties for not picking candidates from the electorate. Both major parties were late to announce candidates. Now time is running out. Raising profiles with the local community will be crucial to winning this electorate. Hairdresser Sally Feng immigrated to Australia from China 30 years ago. Before COVID, many of her clientele were Chinese international students. Now they're gone.
Less than 10% of my customers are international students now. They couldn't come during the pandemic, and now COVID gets worse in China. If the bilateral relationship is better, more people come, the better my business gets.
Well, she thinks the coalition could do more to improve relations between Australia and China. She's happy with the Morrison government's management of the economy because of financial support given to businesses during the pandemic.
I will vote for the current government. It has a better economic plan than the previous Labor government. For small to large business, they did well.
Coaching firm owner Frank Webb disagrees.
One of the reasons that people have that perception is they hear the loud noise, debt and deficit crisis, right? Bad managers, debt and deficit crisis. And if you're hearing that being pounded out all the time, you hear it and you go, oh, that must be true.
He thinks Labour did a good job on the economy when the party was in office. Given under the coalition, Australia has had a continuous run of deficits, and the national debt has soared to record highs. Parramatta is becoming increasingly diverse, with more refugees and migrants settling here in the past 10 years. At least a third of the electorate is considered to have Indian, Chinese or Lebanese ancestry, according to the census. Fipa Framin recently came back from a UN Youth Conference representing Australia. She tried to start her own business during the pandemic, but failed. Now she's struggling to find work and keep up with the cost of living.
Prices are continuously increasing and the wages are not keeping up, so it's really difficult for young Australians to enter the property market.
She wants more support for young entrepreneurs.
It's a very lonely journey if you don't have the right support and if you don't have the right mentors.
Supporting future businesses is something restaurateur Raza also wants from the next government.
I would say, a good nation-building policies where we can have, big cities that we can develop, we can build. No one can stop us to grow.
A future that's worth chasing.
A future that is worth chasing, that's for sure. And of course, we know that businesses need people to work in them. Businesses also need to survive as well in the economic conditions as well. Well, talking about that big debate of yesterday, let's see how they fared.
There's no need to yell.
Feeling the heat.
Why don't we all just take the temperature down?
The Prime Minister forced onto the back foot with the Solomons injecting foreign policy into the domestic fight.
Is it a failure of your Pacific Step Up program?
No, I think no.
This is a massive foreign policy failure. How does he go?
Badly.
In Queensland, the Labor leader relished a fight on workers' wages, with the coalition planning to resurrect a raft of workplace changes rejected by the Parliament.
It had wage cuts in black and white.
Just sanitise.
The government says its aim was to simplify a diabolically complicated system by extending Greenfield's pay deals for the life of a major project, crunching the more than 100 awards and suspending the Better Off Overall test.
Here we go.
Giving companies the power to strike pay deals that could leave some workers worse off.
If you're someone working, say, in retail as a night manager, $10,000 a year can be up for grabs as a pay cut.
But according to the PM, that part is dead.
Don't push that button. I'm not surprised that there's another scare campaign from Labor.
Labor says its policies will create better paid, more secure jobs by enshrining job security as an objective of workplace laws, forcing employers to offer casual workers a permanent job and making entitlements portable. But nowhere are the differences more stark than in the understaffed aged care sector, with Labor promising to fully fund any wage rise awarded by the independent umpire.
Workers are leaving the sector.
One candidate who won't be leaving this contest is Catherine Deeves, the Prime Minister's pick in the once blue ribbon seat of Warringah.
Others might want to cancel her, but I'm not going to have a partnership with them.
Oh, she'll be right.
A gender warrior, she's been forced to apologise for transphobic comments she's made.
Australians are getting pretty fed up with having to walk on eggshells every day because they may or may not say something one day that's going to upset someone.
It's irked a few Liberals and taken a few days, but the reason for Scott Morrison's unswerving support for his Warringah candidate is now clear. She's become his chosen champion against progressive political correctness. But that's still nowhere near the centre of this campaign. Expect the economy and experience to dominate in tonight's first head-to-head debate with Anthony Albanese. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
And there you are. And of course, we know that what happened at the debate. We might try and see if we can get the debate, some scenes of that, because it is quite long. We'll go through that in a minute as well. Well, right now, the PM is rejecting the claims that he bungled on the security relationship with Solomon Islands, because that's making a lot of news at this point in time as well.
Outside the People's Parliament, security tightens. Inside, a defiant Prime Minister lays out a new vision.
We entered into an arrangement with China with our eyes wide open.
Manasseh Sogavare has ignored warnings from Australian spy chiefs and politicians alike, signing a security agreement which could reshape the strategic landscape well beyond Honiara. The capital has been rocked by successive riots over the years, and the Prime Minister thinks China can help stop future unrest.
We intend to beef up and strengthen our police capability and capacity to deal with any future instability by properly equipping our police.
The announcement came out of the blue, not in Solomon Islands, but in Beijing, where a foreign ministry official revealed the deal was done.
China has always been a builder of peace and a promoter of stability in the South Pacific region.
The final text remains secret, but a leaked draft goes well beyond police cooperation, establishing a framework for Chinese troops to enter and vessels to dock.
This represents the worst failure for Australian foreign policy in the Pacific since the end of World War II.
I am extremely disappointed in Australia. The Australian government has been too soft on this issue and too trusting.
Scott Morrison believes trying to heavy Solomon Islands would have been fruitless.
I'm not going to act like former administrations that treated the Pacific like some extension of Australia. The Pacific Islands are very sensitive to that.
Manasseh Sogavare also insists a Chinese military base is off the table, and Mr Morrison is taking that promise at face value.
They are not accepting of any base in the Solomon Islands. They are not. So that is a false claim.
His deputy not so trusting.
We don't want our own little Cuba off our coast.
There's real frustration in Canberra that Honiara has taken this step, particularly as Australia's poured billions into Solomon Islands over the decades to help stabilise it and then to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. But anger at supposed ingratitude is no substitute for strategy, and whoever wins the next federal election will face a much more intense battle to ensure China doesn't gain a foothold in the region. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News.
And that will be challenging, as it is a very challenging news that what is really going to happen there. Well, here's what happened at the debate last night. We have a bit of a problem there with the sound, but anyway, so that was the debate. We'll try and see if we can get it another way. But right now, let's move on and take a look at what the Fair Week has got planned for the way that older Australians are doing.
Hey, Val. Hello. How are you?
2 times a day, carers like Jessica visit Valerie, who lives on her own with dementia.
She needs help with her medication. She can't do that herself. Her meals, she's got dementia. She'll forget. She won't eat.
Valerie gets 1 hour of support in the morning and 1 in the evening. But a Fair Work Commission ruling in February means that could be about to change. Starting July 1st, there will be a 2-hour minimum for shifts of part-time support workers, who make up the bulk of the home care workforce.
If we have to boost that to 2 hours, then how can she have those 2 services?
Valerie's home care package barely covers the 2 1-hour support visits she gets a day now. Aged care providers say some packages will have to be renegotiated.
Can we change the service delivery around to accommodate them within their budget? That might mean for some people that they don't get the care they need at the time they really need it.
All right, give me 1 second.
At this care provider, staff are already under stress. The owner understands the need to improve conditions for support workers who aren't paid for travel between 1-hour visits. But he says 2-hour minimum shifts will be a challenge.
A caregiver can do potentially up to 6 visits a day. Now with the introduction of the 2-hour minimum engagement, the same caregiver can only have 3 visits a day.
Valerie's granddaughter, Melissa Judd, says she's worried about the coming change.
It's going to have such a detrimental effect to the people that rely on these services, and I just don't think people are aware of it.
She fears with these rules, residential aged care may be her grandmother's only option. Norman Hermont, ABC News.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bracelets.
Right now we'll go to that debate
It was a fairly civil, polite affair. There were no disasters from either leader, and I suppose we should explain the format of tonight, given that most viewers who've been tuning into your show haven't seen it. It was about an hour and 5 minutes. 100 undecided voters have been selected. They gathered in the Gabba. They were asked all sorts of questions from housing affordability, about a dozen topics all up, David. Housing affordability, nurses, anti-corruption commission, scare campaigns, electric vehicles and budget repair. Now, some of these subjects obviously are, many of them are going to be interpreted in different ways by both Anthony Albanese and Scott Morrison. Both were fairly assured in their presentations. They were friendly towards each other in the large. They called each other by their first name. Now, my impression was that there was no clear winner tonight. I think it's very early days, and hopefully we'll have at least a couple more of these things. But we have selected a couple of excerpts to play out. But Karen, what was your impression?
I thought it was interesting because it was very conversational, as you said, Andrew, very polite. I think the first name thing was deliberate on the part of Anthony Albanese because it elevates him to the same level as the Prime Minister. If he's not referring to him as Prime Minister but calling him Scott, then they puts him on even keel. And similarly, the Prime Minister was quoting a lot of facts and figures to indicate that he was kind of in charge, in control, knew what he was talking about. So there were little techniques being used, debate techniques, if you like. Each of them had a good moment. I thought the Prime Minister's probably strongest moment was when he confronted Anthony Albanese about his past policy on boat turnbacks and was trying to catch him on the hop a bit, and did, which Mr Albanese had to sort of clean up later. And probably Mr Albanese's strongest moment was when he talked about his vision for the future and talked about not being left behind, and you need to shape the future, not let the future shape you, and implying that the government wasn't doing enough to think ahead. So I think each of them had a moment. I think Anthony Albanese, for the fact that he did hold his own and probably didn't stumble in the way that he had last week, probably comes out looking slightly better, but only because, as one of the Sky News presenters said early on, he didn't fall over. If you don't fall over as opposition leader, then you'll count that as a win.
That's right, Karen. It's a bit of a high-wire act. This is the sort of occasion where avoiding disaster is your number one priority. But look, there was a bit of a stumble from Anthony Albanese. He got himself into a bit of a tangle when it came to border protection and boats, as Karen was indicating. Let's hear this excerpt. It is quite revealing.
You were Deputy Prime Minister. Why didn't you support turnbacks then?
You weren't proposing then.
No,
you were not proposing.
I'm sorry,
you were not.
It was our policy.
You were not.
Turnbacks were our policy before the 2013 election. I was the Shadow Immigration Minister. I designed the policy. So you were on the National Security Committee, I think for the first time at that time. And so why did you not support turnbacks?
I was on the National Security Committee. We had established offshore processing just in 2013 when I became Deputy Prime Minister. That was the first step. That was the first step.
So you were going to do turnbacks?
No, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I just wanted to be clear.
But why is it, Scott, that you're always looking for a division, not looking for an
I'm just
agreement?
looking for the accuracy and the truth.
No, that's significant because it's on boat turnbacks and border protection. And of course, Anthony Albanese fumbled last week. He was asked about offshore detention last week. He was a bit unclear as to what Labor's position had been. In that exchange, you could hear that he suggested that Labor was supportive of boat turnbacks, but in 2013 it was the Abbott-led opposition that supported boat turnbacks. Now, as Karen, you were saying earlier, he did try and clean up some of that.
We will leave that there because it is quite interesting, but also mindful of the time. So that is very, very interesting debate, the first one. Well, right now, we know with the number of people who have just taken up the citizenship, which has been growing So this year there will be hundreds of thousands of new citizens who will be voting for the first time.
For new migrants like me, we're totally in the dark.
Absolutely perplexed. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do.
I am excited.
And I want to be participating in it as much as possible.
And make sure that the future looks a lot closer to what we envision it to be.
To experience the democracy sausages and the cakes and all the chaos, the friendly chaos that accompanies the day of the election. Voting in Australia for the first time can be a little bit intimidating, as I come from a different voting culture.
I witnessed firsthand what the absence of democracy looks like.
It's a little bit different in Indonesia. It's very strict in Indonesia, and if you can't make it, basically that day, you can't make it.
For example, in Ukraine, voting is voluntary. And also, we must choose only one candidate.
I have been Googling a lot, to be honest. I shouldn't be saying that.
I actually haven't started researching on it, but I feel like I should because it's a big decision.
I was talking to a friend the other day and she said, well, a lot of the policies haven't been quite announced, but maybe listen to the budget speech. And I tried, but sort of fell asleep halfway through.
Yeah, I'm just surprised there's no formal or no formal channel from the government or anything like that.
For first-time voters like myself, I would strongly recommend that they go to the AEC website. There are things there that are explained quite well.
It's quite easy. Even my friend said so like that. For the first time, they don't know. Even in the government website, they have the in our language, basically, if we're not really familiar with English. Yeah.
Even the big two political parties don't have many materials available in language, which is a bit disappointing because it makes you feel that your vote doesn't matter. So in many cases, what happens is that, let's say a parent might speak with their teenage kids or even older kids, tell them, well, tell me about this party, tell me about that party.
I really wished that there was a one-stop shop for young migrants or even first-time voters, which gives you a very easy to understand breakdown of a high-level overview of what each party stands for.
I have my own parents, but I guess the good thing is that my brother and I, we have a variety of different opinions on politics, so my friends get both sides of the debate.
Ask people who have voted before.
We will, that is part of the series of videos which have been sent by Australian Electoral Commission, and we will be sharing those in our shows as well as we go along. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, in a show of total solidarity with Mauritius, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Mauritius Prime Minister Pravind Kumar Jugnauth participated in a roadshow together in Gujarat on April 19th. Modi and Jugnauth roadshow was symbolic of the deep bond shared by India with the Indian Ocean island nation Mauritius. The two travelled in separate vehicles as people lined up on both sides of the road. Modi's cavalcade passed first, followed by cars in the Mauritian Prime Minister's convoy. Modi, seated in a closed car, was seen waving at the people. To accord a grand welcome to Modi and Jugnauth, the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation had erected 30 stages along the 2-kilometer route from the airport circle to Indira Bridge on the outskirts of the city. Artists performed traditional dances on these makeshift stages. At least 15,000 people greeted both the Prime Ministers who travelled from the airport to Raj Bhavan. Sanctions from the West has badly hurt Russia's medical system. Now Russia has turned to its long-standing trade partner India for medical equipment and supplies. Russia is seeking more medical equipment from India after sanctions have created a logistical logjams following the invasion of Ukraine. Imports from Europe and China are greatly reduced. Medical equipment companies from India and Russia are expected to discuss ways to boost supplies during a virtual meeting on April 22nd. The event is coordinated by the Association of Indian Medical Device Industry and Business Russia, a business group that promotes bilateral ties. India is hoping to boost exports to Russia as the two nations work out a payment system in local currencies similar to one used during the Cold War to maintain bilateral trade as Moscow faces sweeping international sanctions. India has been criticized by the US and its allies for buying more Russian oil after they sought to isolate Russia due to its war in Ukraine. The International Monetary Fund has lauded India for extending financial support to the crisis-hit Sri Lanka. Kristalina Georgieva, the Managing Director of International Monetary Fund, has thanked India for extending financial assistance to Colombo as the island nation faces an unprecedented economic crisis. Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman assured her Sri Lankan counterpart Ali Sabri that India will try to extend all possible cooperation to its neighbour where the government is facing widespread protests as citizens fail to gather basic necessities like food and medicine. Indian officials said that Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman met Sri Lanka Finance Minister Ali Sabri on the sidelines of IMF-WB spring meetings at Washington DC today and discussed the current economic situation and its approach towards addressing the prevailing challenges in Sri Lanka. The Union Finance Minister assured Sri Lanka that as a close friend and good neighbour, India will try to extend all possible cooperation and assistance to Sri Lanka. Sitharaman was also thanked by Kristalina Georgieva, who appreciated India's help to Sri Lanka in tackling its economic crisis. Georgieva said that the IMF officials are in constant touch with Sri Lanka to find ways to mitigate the economic crisis. Sabri requested the IMF for a rapid financing instrument to mitigate the current supply chain issue. He said that India also made representations on an RFI for Sri Lanka and added that the IMF may consider this request due to the unique circumstances. Sitharaman also met Indonesia Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati on the sidelines of G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting. The finance minister is accompanied by the chief economic advisor Vanantha Nageshwaran. India has approved regulations for Indian and foreign higher educational institutions offering joint or dual degree and twinning programs. This will enable hundreds of students to get dual degrees. India has approved regulations for Indian and foreign higher educational institutions offering joint or dual degrees and twinning programs, with the University Grants Commission approving the regulations for these programs. The decision was taken at a meeting of the Higher Education Regulator on April 19th. Any Indian institution accredited by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council with a minimum score of 3.01 or in the top 100 in the university category of the National Institutional Ranking Framework, or an institution of eminence, can collaborate with any foreign institution in the top 500 of the Times Higher Education or QS World University Ranking without seeking any prior approval from the UGC, said UGC Chairman M. Jagadish Kumar at a press conference. The regulations shall not be applicable to the programs offered online and in the open and distance learning mode, he added. Kumar, however, clarified that no franchise arrangement or study center, whether overtly or covertly by whatever nomenclature used between a foreign higher educational institution and an Indian higher educational institution, shall be allowed under these regulations. According to the approved regulations, a twinning program shall be a collaborative arrangement whereby students enrolled with an Indian higher educational institution may undertake their programs of study partly in India, complying with the relevant UGC regulations, and partly in a foreign higher educational institution. The degree offered under such twinning programs shall be awarded by the Indian institution, Kumar said. For a joint degree program, the curriculum shall be designed jointly by the collaborating Indian and foreign higher educational institutions, and upon the completion of the program, the degree will be awarded by both the institutions with a single certificate. A dual degree program shall be a program jointly designed and offered by the Indian and foreign higher educational institutions in the same disciplines and subject areas and at the same level. The degrees for such a program shall be conferred by the Indian and foreign higher educational institutions separately and simultaneously upon the completion of the degree requirements of both the institutions. This shall not in any way be construed as two degree programs in separate disciplines and subject areas or levels being pursued simultaneously, the UGC chairman said. India is famous for its sweets and culinary delights. Among them, Rasgulla is a famous one. The Indian state of West Bengal is even called Rasgulla state. Residents of the East Indian state of West Bengal and Bengalis worldwide celebrated the Bengali New Year Pohila Boishakh on 15th April. Indians usually distribute sweets to family, friends and neighbors as a mark of celebration. And on this occasion, the world-famous and mouth-watering Rasgulla is the special delight. Bengalis may even attribute their sweet nature, sweet language and also sweet voice to the Rasgulla. One couldn't argue, as many singers and music composers in Bollywood hail from West Bengal, including the legendary Kishore Kumar, R.D. Burman, Salil Chaudhary, Manna Dey, to today's singers like Kumar Sanu, Abhijit, Shan, Shreya Ghoshal, Monali Thakur and many others. Rasgulla is Bengal's most famous sweet, though its origin is debatable. They are made from balls of Indian cottage cheese and salmonella dough, cooked in a sugar syrup. And the variations of Rasgulla is also unique and popular now. Rasgullas have become popular throughout India and other parts of South Asia. In her first outdoor appearance after marriage, Bollywood star Alia Bhatt looked gorgeous as she left for the shoot of her film Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani. Bollywood stars Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt tied the knot in an intimate ceremony in Mumbai on April 14th. In her first airport appearance after her marriage, Alia kept her airport look simple and subtle as she arrived dressed in a pink kurta set. She was spotted at the airport as she was leaving to shoot for Rocky Aur Rani Ki Prem Kahani with Ranveer Singh. Alia Bhatt arrived at the airport looking gorgeous in a pink salwar suit. She greeted the paparazzi outside the Kalina airport with a smile. The suit had floral motifs all over its expanse. The sheer dupatta had a white frill running along the border. The kurta and pants featured pretty details on the sleeves and hem, respectively. She also added a tweeny-weeny red bindi and embroidered jutti heels to her look. Bollywood action star Yash has taken his latest flick KGF Chapter 2 to blockbuster status. The movie has showed up a whopping rupees 600 crores at the box office within a week of release. KGF Chapter 2 is yet to complete a week in theatre.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you today on the Daily India Report. And thank you, Himanshi, for that. All right, now we'll need to go to our functions and events. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you today. It's been wonderful having your company, and we will keep an eye on that election debates, and we'll bring to you all those cases. And as promised, that we will be also bringing to you some of the candidates in here in the studios to talk to them about their policies, where they stand, and what they would be bringing if they are elected. So, and this election is quite an interesting one, and it is quite an important one as well. As we know, we are going through some very, very challenging times. These are unprecedented times that we are going through. So there is just so much. And don't forget that on this Sunday, from 6 p.m., we have the Music Junction Live. And this time we have Sitaro Ki Mahfil, meaning group of musicians who have already featured on our shows. So all of those plus few new numbers, beautiful musical recitals as well, some instrumentals, and the little kids would be a delight to watch. That's all happening. And don't forget that tomorrow from 4 p.m. we have the Migration Ka Safar with Suman Dua right here in the studios. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.